You're listening in on an animated discussion about Batman the Animated Series with two experts in their fields. I'm Joshua Unruh, superhero scholar.
And I'm Caleb Masters, your friendly neighborhood film critic extraordinaire from thecinematropolis.com. And today we'll be discussing Season 2, Episode 16, Harley's Holiday. And Joshua, we're here talking about Harley's Holiday, and since this is a Harley featured episode, I thought it really made sense for us to bring back another wonderful guest who joined us for a few episodes. One of which was Harley and Ivy. Our listeners may remember from a few months ago. So I'm super excited to introduce my co-host on the Cinematic Schematic and host of Soundtrack specifically, Alexandra Bohannon. Welcome back.
Hello, hello, hello.
Really, we're just using this excuse to get Alex back in the box with us.
Correct.
for the final 3 episodes
Yes.
of our coverage of BTAS. It's a beautiful excuse.
Yeah.
But also Harley's Holiday is amazing. So
Yes.
I thought you would enjoy chatting about
Oh,
it.
yes. Thank you guys both for the invitation back. Really excited to join you. And of course, I'm very excited to join you for the final 3 episodes of this initial run here. So I'm very, very stoked to talk Harley's Holiday. Ha. That's like, gotta pronounce those ha's.
The
there.
hot. Oh,
Not
wow,
enough coffee today. Oh, yeah.
So, as always, let's start with this absolutely fantastic, but also befuddling title card.
All right, Joshua. So yeah, I'm with you. I absolutely love this title card. We've had an entire conversation about where this title card draws direct inspiration from. My initial reaction is like some of those animated Breakfast with Tiffany posters.
Right.
But
and I think that's in there. That's part of the influence.
Right. But there's I think there's a lot more there too. Just the whole slew of other inspirations. I know you tweeted out to the listeners to like try to get some help and all sorts of recommendations.
That's the thing, right? Like, for me, I don't know how this was affecting you guys' brain, but I am looking at this title card going, this reminds me of something. And it was, I don't have a better phrase, but like on the tip of my tongue sort of thing, but for my memory, right? So like on the tip of my memory's tongue, like this is a thing. And so finally it had bugged me enough that I did take it to the Twitter family. And I think we've actually got a thesis here where this is not homaging one thing. This is homaging several contemporary things because we got some amazing responses ranging from, your Hepburn influences through some early Disney and even some Saturday Evening Post, comparisons, which are not out of nowhere. Like there's a lot going on.
I definitely got the Cruella de Vil vibe when I was looking at it for a bit with that really long pointy hat. Yeah.
But we also have a specific reference with the being wrapped in the leash to Disney's That Darn Cat.
Oh, classic.
And this was a real find for me that I was unfamiliar with. And I am bad at French. Which of you is better at French? And can tell me, are you familiar with this filmmaker?
Nope.
Okay, I'm going to mess it up.
Hold on, let me look at
Jacques Tati?
Yes, I think that's correct.
So Jacques Tati's Monsieur Hulot's Holiday.
Jacques Tati.
Tati, much better. See, it's been a long time since I took French. So
I've never taken
I only know
French.
this because I'm friends with people who really like the French New Wave.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But then we get a little Saturday Evening Post. We get and a reference to J.C. Leyendeker's style. At the end of the day, I think that's what we have here is a lot of different influences that are contemporary to themselves showing up in this title card so that we all feel like we're reminded of something a little bit different. And that I was feeling justified because I really felt like it was a thing and I just couldn't put my finger on it.
Yeah. And to me, like what the amalgamation of all these styles and influences really does and says is that it conveys a sense of like, this feels classic.
Yeah.
It feels like I have a recommendation I think is very natural for this when we get to that portion of the show. But it has a certain air to it, and it definitely apes Hepburn and all of those kind of in the world, I guess, the world of Gotham kind of contemporaries. But then you're like, at the end of the day, you zoom back out and you're like, this is a children's program. Like they're like, are children really picking up on, oh yes, this is a mix of French New Wave and Audrey Hepburn films?
Not a chance.
But they might recognize Cruella de Vil, obviously.
I think Cruella, and but I still think that's like, you have to really think about it. You're like, where have I seen this before?
Where have I seen this look, right?
Yeah.
And evil dogs, and I mean, Harleys are hyenas, of course, but I mean, yeah, that may be the only one. I think Cruella de Vil. But I mean, here I am, an actual grown up with wide tastes, and I was like, there's this thing and this thing, and then take it to the Twitter, and there's this thing and this thing. And also, before we go on, I want to say thank you to everyone that responded right quick. And if I get anybody's name wrong, I apologize up front, because these are all Twitter friends. So Amit was responsible for That Darn Cat. Really appreciate that. Alex Curtis brought us the French angle with Monsieur Hulot's Holiday, which I'm sure I'm still wrecking entirely. Janine came through with the Saturday Evening Post and J.C. Leyendecker. And Jennifer Crow came through seeing some of the Hepburn angles, especially bringing up Baby. So we've got a lot of folks just kind of pulling it out for us. What's going on? It's all these things, which does give it this really interesting sort of classic screwball / bedroom / road comedy thing going on.
It feels classic, right? Like it feels classic, and I think that's what's great. It takes all these different stylistic choices that we recognize in our brain as this is a classic imagery. This is what something looks like when you want it to have that vibe, and it combines them all into something that's totally unique. But when you look at it and you're like, oh, I've seen this before. Where?
And I'm going to say that thematically, I think this title card also nails it. So we have this kind of this classic feel, or this very classy feel for Harley in this image that never actually happens in the episode. Right.
Crop top and roller skates. It's a good look, but like I would have loved my girl to like really, really lean into aping Breakfast at Tiffany's. She looks in the store window and she's got like a little, it doesn't even have to be that dress from the title card, but a little black dress, and that kind of sunglasses and the pearls. Like, I mean, really to like kind of announce her reformdom through her attire. I know that's like some of the thing is like, oh, I'm wearing this thing, and it's so freaking weird that everyone is like giving me the hairy eyeball.
It's definitely my outfit and not the monsters pulling me along on leashes.
Yeah, no, I don't know what's everyone else's problem. I'm just being normal. Yeah.
But I think that this is an aspirational image, right? Like it would have been nice to see that kind of in the text of the show.
Yeah.
Whereas we just kind of get a nod at it with this dress.
And one, I feel like it would have been easy to do too. Like she goes into a like store, like a really bougie like shopping dress.
Well, it's the place where Bruce Wayne would shop.
Exactly.
Yes, and
also, we'll get to it. Bruce Wayne buying off the rack. I think no.
No.
Oh yeah.
Just saying.
That's why I think he's kind of grumpy the whole time in there, because he's just like she's like pulling up ties and like kind of fussing with him, and he's like, yeah, well, I mean, my French designer I have on call
I have people for this.
Yeah.
But
he's on a date, okay?
The thought that counts, honey.
The last thematic element that I really appreciated from the title card that I think ties into that kind of aspirational thing is that her hyenas are wrapped around her and literally pulling her in two different directions.
Yep.
And I mean, that's definitely what's going on in this episode. She wants one thing and just feels like the world won't let her have that thing in a tragicomic, kind of way. And so just goes hard the other direction. But she wants the other thing. She is literally pulled in two directions on the title card in a way that she is metaphorically pulled in two directions in the episode. A plus title card.
Adore it.
I take it. I'll give it an A++. And also, it's really strange. We're at the end of the run, and we get that's a pretty outstanding title card. Yep. I mean, like I would say there's more crappy or lame or just all right title cards than 100%. Great. And this is an excellent one. So
yeah. And it's actually commensurate with the quality of the episode.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So let's get into the episode, actually. So, Joshua, I just have to throw this out there. I think a great way to kick off the conversation is, people can actually get out of Arkham?
We have talked before with Alexandra, in fact, about how we would prefer to see a different arc for Harley, like not just necessarily winding up with Ivy, not necessarily even going straight per se, but just see her, really become her own person.
Yeah.
And if this were the last Harley episode we ever saw, I think we could live in that space, right?
Yeah.
And it is wonderful to me that in theory, Harley Quinn is the only Arkham inmate we see go for real straight.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of go straight episodes this batch, this second
A lot of it actually,
this sort of second season, and to have Harley be the one that actually pulls it off, even if she doesn't pull it off 100% in the episode, does my heart good. I really like it.
Yeah.
She at least attempts to legit go straight.
And it's not like that weird nebulous, like, are we trying to befuddle the audience into thinking, like, is it a go straight story, is it not go straight story? I feel like it's pretty textually there, and for the audience, like us, to realize that she is, like, means this.
Yeah,
she wants this.
Yes.
And I love that we had no Joker in this episode.
Yeah, none.
It was, I mean, how refreshing. Like, here you have, she's getting out of Arkham, and like he's such a big player in her life, and we don't even see like something like she passes a cell in Arkham as she's getting released, and there's like, Joker on like the cell door. It's nothing, like no references at all. And so that's one thing I really appreciated. It really made her stand out as her own person, and it's not Joker's fault that she goes back to jail. It is literally through a storm, and like kind of her fault too.
I mean, she reacts very poorly to the bad luck she is dealt.
Yes, for sure.
She has like an outsized reaction.
Yes,
which is very Harley understandable.
Well, and it makes sense, right? Well, I mean, obviously she's got
a chip on her shoulder.
She's got a chip on her shoulder. She's got some actual, like, probably emotional, mental stuff she's still working through.
Still working on.
Right.
Just because you get out of Arkham doesn't mean you're
Arkham's
perfect.
out of you.
You're
Right.
not ready for the world.
Right.
Arkham is like, we're going to deal with the most serious problems.
Right.
But
Yeah.
part of whatever passes for parole, we can backfill this. Whatever passes for parole from Arkham is, you're going to continue quite a lot of therapy.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's my thing, is in a more realistic mental health setting, the ideal is like if someone is transitioning out of like basically being locked up, is that you're kind of in like a halfway house situation, and you don't just get to do whatever you want because you are just let out and you're fine now, you're healed, which goes back to take a second on the conversation, just prison recidivism in reality as a whole is like we frequently just do that for like inmates in normal institution, is just kick them out and say, figure it out.
Yep.
Ta-da.
Yeah. And then when people don't, we're shocked. Right.
Yeah. And they go back to jail.
How could you screw up after we let you out with no real good starting point? Yeah. That's a real problem.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what happens to Harley here. And I think, her reaction is normal. Like, she's kind of like
Harley normal,
right?
Yeah.
Let me clarify, which is, hey, she's kind of more defensive. She's like inherently on the defensive. She's like, people already have this idea of who I am, and I mean, again, there's also that lack of self-awareness. Again, the hyenas on roller skates.
Confused that it's the hyenas that are freaking people out, right? And we've talked a lot before about how she will pretend to be less in touch with reality for the gag,
right?
Yeah,
and it's possible she's playing to an audience of herself right there and is not completely unaware. Yeah. Right? Because she's smart,
Yes.
Right? But also it's her first day out, and maybe it's a little of both, right?
Right.
Like
it was interesting to see her out in her normal attire, though.
Yeah, no face paint.
No face paint. No costume. I thought that was a little neat touch. But let's just talk about I love this kind of comedy of errors that ensues. So she goes in the store to buy a dress. She like just throws the cashier a ton of money and walks out. So technically
she actually buys it.
Yeah, she actually bought it. She actually buys it, but she doesn't really know the system, I guess, or doesn't really think about it, or is wanting to get out of there just because she's concerned. And then the fact that like the security officer comes over, hey, the tag, and she like, she's like, oh, you're out to get me.
She has what is kind of a reasonable reaction to a person in uniform.
Yeah.
For Harley.
Of course.
Yeah.
Which has been running away from the police for how long?
Right. Yeah.
My thing that I kept expecting the episode to do, and I was pleasantly surprised, is for the people on the outside to like give her reason to act the way she does. I mean, granted, they do eventually, but like when the security guard approaches her, granted, he's kind of a triggering figure in her world. Like I was expecting him to be like, excuse me, ma'am, you just beeped. Did you pay for this? Like really sassy to her. And he's like, no, just give me the thing and I'll take off the security tag. And then that's whenever she disarms him with the mannequin.
And then they disarms him.
Yeah.
With with the mannequin. And then also one of the other security guards comes over. She's like, six the hyenas loose. And
Yeah.
it's like, whoop, who let her have hyenas? I just have to ask. I know, like, is that legal? Can you legally own hyenas?
My guess
Hybrid.
is no.
Maybe in Gotham, maybe?
Wouldn't it be fantastic if she actually had a license for the hyenas?
Yes.
Because again, we've joked about she's more competent, she's more rational. She's not fine, but she's more rational than she pretends to be for the gag.
Right.
Wouldn't it be amazing if Joker's like, I want hyenas, she gets them, but actually follows the rules and has like the license to have, which would kind of make sense because Joker also falls almost immediately out of love with the hyenas, but she loves them. They're her babies.
Yeah.
I want to talk for a moment about how positive her interactions are with almost everyone in the department store.
Yeah.
I mean, the security guard is trying to do the right thing, but is kind of a little overbearing about it, which does set her off, is very much a triggering thing, but he is trying to do the right thing. The cashier, when she says, I just want a second chance, is that so wrong? And this cashier is like, nothing wrong with that I can see. I mean, it's just on her side. And of course, Bruce Wayne is very much like trying to
Help her.
smooth her way through this very difficult thing, which I want to come back to. All of the Batman Bruce Wayne compassion that there is in this episode is a lot. And that's a drum I want to beat as often as possible, especially in this week where I have dealt with yet another deluge of really awful, unpopular opinions about Batman on Twitter. Friends, I muted Batman on Twitter. Oh yeah, well, they're all terrible. That's not fair. They're not all
Batman
terrible.
kills people, Josh. He has no compassion. What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. That's the tip of the iceberg. But I just really appreciate how she comes in. No one stops her. They try and talk to her about the hyenas. She assures them the hyenas are fine. But then they let her go. Like, we don't want to ask if they're service animals or not. We're just going to let it go, right?
Well, no,
right?
I mean, who's going to be the person to ask about the hyenas?
It's a weird, it's a space where it's like, well, maybe we'll just let this go. But then she runs into Bruce Wayne, who of course has very much like skin in the game, I think, of her reforming, even though she has no idea.
He wants her to do the right thing. And I think we've seen throughout the series, he does have a certain amount of empathy for Harley specifically. I mean, he's empathetic towards a lot of his rogues gallery.
Yeah.
But I feel like we've seen him numerous times kind of say, speaking on the Joker behalf, she's like, you don't have to do this.
You don't have to do this.
Yeah.
You don't have to be part of this thing. Also, we've seen him have a lot of compassion for every one of these go straight stories.
Oh yeah.
A little less for the Riddler, but I think the Riddler is also pretty obviously unrepentant right from jump.
Well, no, that's
but he wants to believe Ivy.
Yeah,
so
he
badly
really
he
does
wants to believe
Ivy.
Ivy.
Yep.
And he, I think, actually believes Harley. And that's why, by the way, I also really like Harley on the make.
Yeah.
Unattached, I see, and just swooping like into his arm. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun stuff.
So it's just so many good, really positive interactions with people in this department store. And I don't want to turn this into like a bash the security guard per se, but I mean, he does kind of approach it with just a little too much authority, which is his job.
Yeah.
And then we have a very outsized Harley reaction.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Well, and I think that was part of the bait and switch too. I mean, even for the audience, like the security guy was coming over and he was a little harder than he needed to be probably. But also I think that was for the audience as well to be like, oh no, there he is. And he's going to arrest her for something. And she, I think because my initial reaction was before he said the tag thing, you're like, oh, I guess she accidentally stole something or
he, I think,
or recognized her.
Yeah. It's such a good little moment where we get our audience expectations subverted. And that's kind of like a consistent thing throughout this whole episode. It's like you think X and Y happens. And that's always such a nice joy. And that's like such a fixture of this kind of era of screwball comedy that this thing is like aping.
Yeah, absolutely. I also, and the one to finish up the department store, the one negative interaction she has is with Veronica.
Right.
And by the end of the episode, they're BFF.
Yeah.
I love this.
Yeah.
I love this. And even Veronica's not like super negative, but she is like, excuse me.
Yeah, it's just like, ma'am,
I am
that's
on a
my
date
man.
with this man.
Yeah, no, it was really good, and I like that they kind of plant that in the episode, and I just think it's funny. She just steals a car that happens to be Veronica's car, and Veronica happens to be the daughter of some general, apparently.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's
That's
hilarious.
a beautiful thing.
And I like how they're like attacking Gordon late. The general's attacking Gordon for not being serious enough. I don't know. I thought that whole thing was really funny. I do think it's kind of strange and hilarious. I mean, obviously thematically it fits that Gordon's like, yeah, Bruce. No, and he didn't say Batman. He says Bruce Wayne says he thinks it's just a misunderstanding. It's like this whole store got like busted. And Bullock's car gets like wrecked.
And he's an adult in the room, right? Like you can think whatever you want about Bruce Wayne as, like the general refers to him as that milquetoast because he didn't stop this apparently dangerous criminal.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
But carries a lot of respect and weight in the city, is a well-known philanthropist, probably has his name on the halfway house that Harley's actually living. I mean,
sure.
we don't know, but to have him, I like that Gordon makes a reference to Bruce Wayne as a responsible person, because you can imagine Bruce Wayne is going to bring, as we see, all of his Batman weight, to helping Harley out of this difficult situation. Why would he not also bring his Bruce Wayne weight? So I'm not going to say he called up and threatened Gordon, but he was probably like, listen, we're friends. I support you. I show up at all your stuff. You need to dial all of this back or we're going to lose her forever. I
mean, I just think it's kind of funny because Gordon and Bullock was there too. Bullock's car got wrecked. And again, Bullock, that was super, well, he is the worst, but I do think it's really funny that Gordon's, I don't know. I'm sure that conversation happened. It's just really funny to think that Gordon, after this person that he's tried to capture over and over again, is like, well, they said it was a misunderstanding. So
I think that's why I want to backfill the Bruce Wayne thing. Cause it's good for Gordon. Like it makes him look a little less like a doof.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's good for Bruce Wayne. And it's not wildly out of character for everything we've seen in this episode for Bruce Wayne.
I think it's a fun, for Bruce Wayne especially.
Yeah.
I think it's a fun tonally thematic thing that just you wouldn't see in a normal BTAS episode though.
Right.
It's fun.
And it also opens the door for this clearly out of control general
Yeah.
to take to the streets of Gotham in a tank.
Only in Gotham.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the kind of evolving relationship between Harley and Veronica, like in this episode, because we've talked about how we've had romantic overtones with Harley and Ivy, which is great. But what I found really excellent here is I've got all that in the back of my mind and that subtext is that doesn't really happen here. We don't have a lot of romance, but we have like an actual gal pal kind of friendship growing, which we also do not see often enough in media, let alone with a somewhat unsympathetic protagonist. I mean, Harley's the protagonist of this episode, right? So I just really appreciated that. Not to make you speak for every woman everywhere, Alex, but I mean, when do you get to see non-catty actual friendship between two female characters?
Yeah.
Let alone see it grow in one episode, right? I mean, am I crazy?
You said between Ivy or between Veronica?
Veronica
just
and
making
Harley.
sure. I was like, I just wanted to double check.
I feel like we have some subtext to discuss about Ivy and Harley at the end.
Cool.
But
I just wanted to double check that I was about to say a thing about the right.
Because this is a little bit like that. It's not exactly like, but it can certainly remind you of that Queens of Crime thing, right? But it's not, because Veronica is not on board for the crime. And also there's no, we also smooch subtext.
Yeah, right. And that's one thing that I find particularly empowering is, again, subverting audience expectations. Unfortunately, in media, we're established that, if you see little snooty Miss Rich Girl, which it's not even established that way, but like if you just like take it very surface level, that's how Veronica comes off.
Right? The trope.
The trope. And so you see that coming out, and then you're like, well, then they're not going to get along. But then they actually have these, like, the initial shock kind of wears off, and they end up having like some really great moments of like connection. And it's like, both, Harley's character, she's growing. And then also Veronica, it feels like she's grown as well from this interaction. She's maybe like more sympathetic to people that have like, like how Harley can stereotype her as Miss Little Rich Girl. She herself can like understand that there's someone beneath the mask, literally and figuratively, whenever you have Harley. And that's such a nice thing, too, because it's so easy just to portray like rich people as being uncaring, whatever,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And that's nice to also know that Bruce Wayne isn't currently tangled up with someone that is just not very nice.
Yeah, yes, I had not actually thought about that. I mean, because Bruce Wayne's romantic entanglements
We know his
are surface.
We don't ever invest anything into
But
any of
he
those.
actually has to spend time with her.
Right.
And we do see, she's maybe a little insulated from the world, but we also see that she's not so insulated she can't realize that Harley got caught up in something and accidentally, kind of drug her along. And I really like that moment when Boxy's like, yeah, we're going to ransom her. By the way, welcome back Boxy.
Yeah, I was going to, He was from Harley. He was in Harley and Ivy was the last one he was in also, right?
He was in, I'm going to forget the title, but he was in the episode where Batman had to get Harley's help finding the Joker.
Oh, yes, that's right. Okay, yes.
Because that when he says, not only did you bust up my racket, you brought the bat down on me.
Yes.
It's his club that we got the actually good Harley
Batman
musical number.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
The better version of Batman and Harley. Yeah.
Everything is the better version.
Everything.
Batman and Harley.
Yes.
But yeah, anyway, so like Veronica realizes in that moment, oh, this is all an accident. Like she's doing the best she can and she is not going to let me get hurt in the process. It's for 22 minutes, there's just like a really believable and organic relationship grown between these two women in a superhero story, which is like a small piece of the larger media where this does not happen lots.
But it doesn't happen often, and I think it just goes to show that that's good storytelling and also quality voice acting. I mean, like they didn't have that many scenes together, but they made them count. They made them count really well.
When it was especially just them when they could talk. I mean, the conversation after that scene when Harley... Also, side note, Harley's jokes are all great.
Oh, they're amazing.
Which
in
again
this
is
episode.
so weird that the Joker usually only lands about 60% of his jokes in any episode, but all of Harley's are always just like bangers every time. But that whole, I do feel a little responsible for all this.
Yeah. That's such a good one.
And Veronica's snarky, you think, turns into this like really sad clown look for Harley that gives Veronica a moment. Like they even animate this realization that Veronica's like, oh, I just hurt her feelings and I really didn't mean to. It's just, man, for an episode with a friggin' tank and a bunch of car wrecks.
Yeah.
There is some remarkably subtle character work going on.
Yeah.
This is a really good episode.
Yeah. No, it's good. And I do want to bring it back to the Harley and Ivy thing, kind of lean towards like the closing of the episode. I mean, I think we should go ahead and talk about the closing episode because I think two things. We want to hit on the compassionate Batman. And also, I mean, I was talking to Alex about this. Like, they don't establish full 100% like Harley and Ivy. But the fact that when she comes back to Arkham in this episode and Ivy's the one watching...
Not Joker, which again, exclamation point on that observation.
Yes.
Joker is no part of her rehab.
Yeah.
And is no part of her somewhat recidivism, not even as a presence.
Yeah. Although something I just realized in thinking back about the episode, as Harley is trying to escape, I find it so interesting that whenever she pulls out the grenade, it's a Joker grenade and it's like the clear with the red lips and everything. And so it's like, to me, that's like such a great little symbolic moment of like her newfound freedom and she's trying to liberate herself from her past. And then she's like, but she just can't like get away from it. And that was a moment where she was trying to choose going back and it wasn't, and luckily it wasn't successful.
It's a real escalation of her efforts. Like everything else was get away, save Veronica, also then get away.
Yeah.
But also, at that moment, she's like, I will murder Batman with this grenade in order to get away. That is excellent.
Yeah, she channels her inner Joker. You know, her weakness, her worst impulse.
Her worst impulses.
To like try to get away.
Absolutely the devil on her shoulder.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a really great observation. Yeah.
And the good thing though, it's like the grenade doesn't go off and then or does it? I can't remember.
It does go off, but it endangers
her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And symbolism.
Dang.
If only she hadn't turned back to her Joker ways. But
yeah.
but when she gets back, they're all like, yeah, you're just going to have to undergo a little more rehab. You're well on your way.
And we hear textually,
Veronica is not pressing charges.
Yes.
So that's really cool. But I do think, I just think it's a nice nod that Ivy's there and not the Joker.
Yeah.
Kind of showcasing a different life that maybe Harley's striving towards.
Not exactly a healthy relationship, but significantly more healthy in a romantic way than the Joker.
It's more it's more of a this goes two ways versus abusive, where you're constantly being talked about how garbage you are.
That's true. Ivy is a much better. If you can have a healthy pull into costumed criminality, Ivy is a much more healthy pull in that direction than Joker is.
You're trying to kill a bunch of people. At least like I feel like when they're together, they're equals on the same level.
They just rob
and it's not that
people.
Joker's not better, but like in that relationship, it's definitely there's weird power dynamics that are really unhealthy and like really upsetting. Versus Harley and Ivy, it's like they're still killing people, but I feel like they're doing this together in a way that's for their relationship is healthier, I guess.
Their hobby as girlfriends is robbing Gotham blind.
Yes.
And I'm fine with it.
Me
I'm
too.
fine with it.
And I just love that little bit. I mean, they lean so hard into it. She like kisses Batman and Batman walks away with that smirk on his face. Surprise.
There's a lot of joke.
Also,
good joke.
Also, Joker can never get a smirk on Batman, but Harley can.
Has made him laugh and then smirked him out. I love it. I love it.
And so, but she's like, oh, jealous, that kind of thing. But like, it's jealous of her, not jealous that she's kissing Batman. It's like, oh, I'm acting out to get senpai to notice me, like that kind of thing. Like,
I know. Okay. The look that Ivy and Robin share during that kiss is so like, I'm loath to read any more subtext into the Batman and Robin relationship, right? Based on the Harley and Ivy relationship. Sure. But the fact that those two are just like, hell if we know in that moment is delicious.
Fantastic.
It's good.
I was legit tearing up during Batman's, next time you can do it and pulling out the dress.
Yes.
Like, I mean, I was
great.
choked up.
That was
I was legit choked up. And then for them to immediately go into a laugh out loud moment with the kiss and the look between Robin and Ivy, and then what are you looking at?
Yeah.
I went from choked up to choking on laughs.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this episode.
It's fantastic. Well, and I really like the line. She's like, well, why would you try to help me? And he's like, I had a bad day one time too. And I was like,
and listen to Harley. Nice guys like you shouldn't have bad days. Oh my God.
That was like, that little exchange has some of the best dialogue I've really seen in BTAS.
There's a lot of layers there.
Yeah.
There's some stuff to unpack. Like we could do an entire episode on that scene.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That
so
was
good.
hours long. I mean, there's so much going on. I really like it.
Yeah, me too.
But honestly, in this episode that is just stupendous from end to end, that final scene is just heart-wrenching and hilarious.
Yes.
Right next to each other, and is just a cap on what is otherwise just... it would have been an amazing, stupendous, one of the best episodes without that final scene. But that final scene is like Shakespearean.
Yeah.
Like there's just a lot going on.
it's a lot. Well, given the investment we have in those characters, like that scene, that like those lines have a lot of punch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who did this one?
Okay, this was written by Paul Denny. So
No surprise.
That made no surprise there. And it was directed by Kevin
Altieri.
Yeah. So it's a pretty good combo.
Kevin Altieri is a great animation editor who I don't know if he got a start on Batman the Animated Series, but BTAS is the reason I know his name. Right?
Yep.
And so it's no surprise. This is great. I mean, and Paul Denny also wrote the Queens of Crime, the Harley and Ivy episode. I mean,
the best episodes of BTAS, Paul Denny probably wrote. Although we did one recently that it was kind of a flop. But I mean, generally speaking, he's almost a home run every time.
And I think he knows where he wanted Harley's life to go and was, doing his best to work towards that.
in the whole idea that everything resets, it's permanent. Change isn't permanent in this kind of.
Well, actually, no. I'm glad you mentioned that, Alex, because here's the thing, and whenever we get to the new Batman Adventures, eventually we'll talk about it. But it does, like going back, it does reset a little bit. The Harley and Joker thing is back in full swing. Like it's, I mean, just like you'd expect. Like they're doing the same stuff they did throughout this show, specifically in the earlier episodes of this show. It's like right back to the status quo.
That'll be part of a larger conversation that we are almost to, but where that is almost but not quite a completely different show.
Yeah.
In some ways it's completely different, in some ways it's the same. Yeah,
it's
definitely.
a continuation that is not really a continuation, and that works both for and against it. And so there's a preview of a lot of our post redesign Batman conversation. Because there is a big reset here that really undoes what was 9/10 a happy ending as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And I actually would have been fine with Harley going back to crime if she went back to crime with Ivy.
Right.
Yeah.
Which even that is potentially teased in this final scene. Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, all right, Joshua, this has been a terrific episode. Alexandra, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
But as always, we like to close out our show with recommending some alternate media, whether it be a TV show, video game, book, whatever.
Yeah.
So what would you recommend our listeners who liked Harley's Holiday also check out?
Guys, I'm so excited.
I'm excited because you've been keeping it secret.
Yes. Alfred Hitchcock's North by Northwest.
Oh, boom.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
This is like, if you want to see this episode for like an hour, like a feature length of this episode of comedy of errors, get tied up in this life of crime that I didn't choose, on the run and everyone's after me. He definitely, of course, there's more of the love affair thing with his Cary Grant's contemporary in that movie. But yeah, everything is there. And the score by Bernard Herrmann is amazing. And of course, the aesthetic is very much in keeping with Harley's Holiday, because that's the time that he shot it. But yeah, it's all there. It's all amazing. I love that movie so much. So yeah, definitely. That's the only recommendation fantastic. I could give to this episode.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Joshua, how about you?
So I kind of have a bunch. They all largely fall under the umbrella of screwball racing comedy, but you kind of get like different eras and different approaches. I think that this episode owes the most to It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. I think that's the right number of mads. I can never keep track.
There's a lot of mads in there.
It's a lot of mads. But it is
They need to make a sequel starring Mads Mikkelsen to fix it.
Oh my God.
That was so dorky. That was like a joke quality of the Joker, I feel.
Mads.
Oh, sorry, guys. It was low-hanging fruit.
It was.
But this is an older film, again, kind of contemporary with the influences that we're seeing in the title card, which again I think is not an accident. That may be why they decided to pull from all kinds of things. But it really is like a screwball racing comedy where everything just continuously gets more and more wildly out of hand. And for those of you who may not be familiar with it, if you are familiar with Hanna-Barbera's cartoon Wacky Racers is literally Hanna-Barbera saying, what if we did It's a Mad, 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 Mad World with all of our characters? So you may know that one better. But you jump a little bit further in time and you get one of my favorite movies, which I think they're referencing very specifically with Bullock in this, Smokey and the Bandit.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, the Bullock's movement through this episode, though he is very much like a tertiary player at best, is very Sheriff Buford T. Justice.
Yes.
Up to and including the car, just more and more of it falling apart and being destroyed. You jump forward 5 or 6 years, you get into Cannonball Run territory, which is still bringing in Burt Reynolds, and goes back to being more about a race. But I mean, again, just like this wacky, zany, over-the-top racing stuff, I think they were borrowing from all of these in different ways for this episode. And it's kind of fascinating that that's a thing that keeps showing up in film. Like,
right.
You've got your kind of 60s version, you've got your kind of 70s version, you've got your kind of 80s version. Cannonball Run had 3 movies, for crying out loud. I mean, it's and then really without the tone shifts massively, but it doesn't go away because what do we got? Like 100 Fast and Furious movies now?
We're up to 9, and we're getting this summer we're getting the spinoff Hobbs and Shaw that I'm totally on board with.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not sure that I would count like the whole Fast and Furious thing as a good alternate rec for this, but just looking at that, cultural fascination we have with weird racing choices. I love it. And I would recommend all of those films.
Excellent.
Except for Cannonball Run 2 and 3. I don't want to put my stamp on those diminishing returns.
Excellent. Well, as this podcast, Fast and Furious aficionado, if you're going to watch one of those, it's got to be Fast 5. Don't watch the other ones are not as good, but they're still good.
If you're only going to do one, that's
if you're only doing one, you got to watch Fast 5. It's the Avengers of the it's the Avengers of the Fast and Furious universe up to that point.
It's all true.
It's so much fun. So I kept thinking about this, kind of the comedy of errors thing that Alexandra was talking about. I recently saw a movie called The Man Who Killed Don Quixote from director Terry Gilliam, who I think is an underrated auteur director. He did 12 Monkeys. He did Brazil. Man, he's done a lot of amazing films. But he's one of those directors who consistently has the worst luck imaginable.
Yes,
like productions go awry. He loses budget. So without getting too in the weeds, here's some history behind The Man Who Killed Don Quixote. It's based off of, I think, like a book or a memoir. He was trying to make it back in the late 90s, early 2000s. Originally got as far in development as the casting, and they even got to the production. Like, they had casted Johnny Depp in the titular role. They went to shoot, and like a storm came and like wiped out their sets, and they didn't have any budget, so the film got canceled. But Terry Gilliam didn't give up. He's like, no, I want to make this movie. So he spent the next almost 20 years trying to get this thing made. So finally, the final version that came out, we end up with the film starring Adam Driver, Jonathan Pryce, Stellan Skarsgård. Other people who were originally, again, throughout the various years and iterations of this movie.
20 years of iterations.
Yeah, they had like casting. Ewan McGregor was at one point considered for the role. Jack O'Connor, it looks like Johnny Depp was cast. Even Robin Williams at one point, back when he was still live and kicking. So the final movie came out though. He rewrote the script. Over the years rewrote the script. So in the final version, you have this filmmaker who was trying to make this movie and is nostalgic about his first story, The Man Who Killed Don Quixote. So he's like taking this stroll down memory lane. Everything that could go wrong with his film, with his vacation, with his trip down memory lane, everything that could possibly go wrong goes wildly wrong at every step of the way. And it's tons of fun.
It's on point.
It's so fun. And especially, I don't know if any of you, if you are fans of Adam Driver, just imagine him doing his kind of like deadpan thing, but where he's like tripping over, like it's everything from like physical humor to like dark black humor. Like it's just, it's so good.
That deadpan delivery with pratfalls.
Yes.
Oh,
I am fascinated by this concept.
Can't wait.
It is super interesting. And now here's the thing. This actually, fun story. So the movie finally gets made. It goes to the Cannes Film Festival last year, which is one of the world's biggest, most prominent film festivals. And they're going to debut it. They've got a release date. But then there's a lot, like the day before it debuts, there's a huge lawsuit from one of the donors who'd given money along at some point. They had some sort of stakeholder. They claim they had stakeholders. So the movie screened at Cannes and then never got a theatrical release. So it's like, no, this movie's never going to come out.
That's amazing.
Fortunately, Fathom was able to get a one-night screening a few months ago, which is where I saw it. And the only reason I'm recommending it is because you can now find it video on demand. I think it's on iTunes and Amazon. So
Okay,
nice.
cool.
So it is available.
So eventually, a happy ending, just like we imagined for Harley.
Exactly. It did
Bringing
get a
it
happy
right
ending.
back. Unreal. To go back to North by Northwest for a moment, I have to say, there is some kind of symmetry between Cary Grant getting chased by a prop plane. Like, you think that being chased by a tank is very, oh my God, that is over the top. But like in this movie was live action, where Cary Grant is chased by a prop plane. Like, that's just, to me, it's like, man, getting chased by bizarre methods of transportation.
Yeah.
And anyway, I was just pondering.
That's not your father. That's your father in a tank.
Yeah.
Well, that about wraps up this animated discussion. Caleb, where can people go to continue the conversation with you?
Well, Joshua, you can always find me on Twitter talking about film, television, video games, and all sorts of other pop culture goodness at C Masters Talk. That's letter C Masters Talk. I'm also the editor-in-chief and film critic at the Cinematropolis. and we publish these in-depth essays on all types of different films, oftentimes including science fiction and superhero films, all the stuff you'd want to read about. And you can find all of these articles at thecinematropolis.com. Joshua, what about you?
I'm also most active on Twitter, where you can find me easily enough at Joshua Unruh. And remember that an animated discussion is a Pulp Diction Productions program and is 100% supported by listeners like you. To find out how you can keep this and our other shows in production, check out patreon.com/pulpdictionproductions.
Join us in our next episode when we'll be reconnecting with our good old friend Mr. Freeze in Season 2, Episode 19, Deep Freeze.
Until next time, we'll see you back here. Same bat time, same bat channel.